Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here. When I tell you I'm a massive Superman fan, I don't say that to you lightly. I support Superman like I would support a sporting team. He is part of my very core. I believe in him wholeheartedly. So when I hear people saying, oh, Superman's so hard to write for, he's too powerful, he's too this, it really winds me up. Now, this YouTube channel called Closer Look decided to do a video saying why Superman is hard to write for. Now, they also did a video which is why Batman v Superman sucked. I will deal with them and that video on another video on this channel. So we are going to watch this video and interrupt it, and I'm going to put them right once and for all, because no one tells me Superman is hard to write for. If you've got an imagination and you love this character, it shouldn't be a problem. Also, this channel is one of these channels who doesn't care about characters and storytelling. It's just doing a video. So we're going to watch this and interrupt it, and I'm going to tell you what I think. Let's do it.
Is so iconic is both a blessing and a curse for DC. A blessing for the marketing department and a curse for the writer. In this video essay, I will be analysing why Superman is so difficult to write for, so you can apply this critique to your own work. Right off the bat, I want to make myself clear. Superman is not a bad character. There are numerous examples of work revolving around him that have been received very well by critics and fans alike. Be it the original films in the late 70s, to the animated show, to the Injustice comic series, there are plenty of examples to prove he still has a place in our culture. That being said, it is a very defendable statement to say Superman is the hardest superhero to write for. Why is that? Well, there are a number of reasons, but the foremost of all is this. He is perfect. He is extremely powerful, extremely intelligent, extremely handsome, has an unwavering set of morals, and is generally loved by everyone in his world, apart from the villains he fights. If there were a job interview and superheroes were to be asked about their flaws, most of them would respond talking about their traumatic past and list a wide variety of flaws. If Superman were being interviewed and he was questioned about his weaknesses, he would respond with, I care too much, or I work too hard. This very much leaves the writer with little to work with, as for many people, a character's weaknesses are a fundamental part of what makes them interesting. Although,
it depends what you see as perfect, doesn't it, son? I mean, yes, he is pure-hearted. He has all these powers. He is an attractive man. But Superman, this is the point. Superman doesn't see himself as perfect. And he isn't perfect. He has to lie to people on a daily basis about who he really is, to protect them and to protect himself. Already there, you've got something to work with. And in fact, the TV show Smallville, which I love and adore still at this time, really worked with the secrets and lies aspect. Let's carry on.
But this is only a single obstacle, and some Superman writers have found an answer. Change his character. Put him in no-win scenarios where he is forced to compromise himself on some level. In Man of Steel, there is a scene towards the end where Zod is about to kill a family, and there is only one way Superman can save them, by breaking the rules of his unbreakable moral code and murder Zod. In my personal opinion, I liked this scene. It gave Superman a complexity and helped to make him feel more human. If I were the writer for this scene, I would have probably done the same thing. However, because this was a change from the source material where Superman has a very clear no-kill rule, this scene became a controversial one amongst fans, and for a fair number of them, this change from the source material was received very poorly. This comes back to my opening statement. The fact Superman is so iconic is a curse for the writer. When it comes to writing Superman, there are two choices a writer can make. They can either stay true to the source material and appease the fans, but end up with a potentially flat, boring character. Examples of incarnations that have done this are the original animated series and Superman Returns. Or the writer can change Superman, give him flaws and weaknesses. This helps to make him more interesting and makes it easier to write a more compelling story. However,
right, let's talk. Basically, right, the idea of Superman is he's cool, he's awesome because he's got powers, because he is pure-hearted, because he is a hero. He doesn't have to be an arsehole to be good. Now, that's totally different to Doctor Who, where the Doctor is a very selfish, arrogant character, and that makes him interesting. With Superman, he's always had these powers. He's always been pure-hearted. The reason for the pure-heartedness is the way Martha and Jonathan Kent brought him up. Again, Smallville beautifully demonstrated this as a positive, not a negative. So, you know, basically just saying, just because someone's a good person, or our perception or your perception of good, doesn't make him boring.
If the writer does this, such as in Man of Steel, a large number of fans will resent them for it. This is a no-win scenario for the writer. It wasn't always like this. Back in the post-World War II era, people wanted to read about flawless men in a flawed time because it gave them hope for the future and offered some escapism.
Also, anyone who's ever read Superman's first few comic stories, like the first Action Comics, Superman is pretty brutal. I mean, he beats up a guy who's beating up his wife. He beats up a mine owner who's abusing his employees. In the original comics, Superman was actually quite rough and ready, and not what he became later on. So for me, if I was writing a movie, I would bring back Superman, the social justice warrior, the hero who was dealing with domestic issues like wife beaters, like unfair employers. You could take it then within the story, you give him a bigger kind of threat within what he's already doing. As I say, he's not difficult to write for if you've got a brain and an imagination.
However, as the times have moved on, what the audience wants has moved on along with it. Now people want to see flawed characters with dark pasts and murky morals. Characters such as Batman and Captain America have evolved with the times quite well, but Superman has largely stayed the same. Batman has always been a dark character, but look at Captain America. He also served the same purpose. He was a flawless character whose purpose was to give the people hope. Yet he has evolved with the times into a darker one. Why hasn't Superman done the same? The reason: Superman's character is an archetype. Captain America's is not. The point of Superman is that he embodies the absolute best in humanity. He is powerful, yet incorruptible. He is supposed to be the perfect man. So if you gave him weaknesses, he ceases to be the Superman. This presents a paradox. Writing for an archetype well is incredibly hard, as archetypes are flat and uncomplex. The more a writer makes Superman interesting, the less like Superman he becomes.
Basically, right, look, Superman's got a great kind of origin story as far as I'm concerned. He comes from another planet. His parents send him to Earth before their planet is destroyed. That's a good past for Superman, and that past is always with him. It's great that he's got this heritage that's, that makes him interesting for me. And there's still emotions. His interactions with Jimmy and Lois still make him interesting. He doesn't have to have this deep, dark past to be an interesting character.
In my spare time, I am a bit of a comic book nerd. I have read a fair amount of them, a lot of them being Superman ones, and the only comic book series that heavily involves Superman, which I thoroughly enjoyed, was the Injustice series. However, for any of my fellow comic fans out there, you will probably see where I'm going with this. In the Injustice series, Superman is manipulated into killing Lois Lane. This sends him into a downward spiral where he totally loses his sense of morals and becomes a tyrannical dictator. The comic book series for me around Superman, which is the most entertaining, is the one where Superman's character is the least recognisable. Now, all that said and done, there are still stories revolving around the traditional Superman that I genuinely loved. If I had to give a single answer, my favourite story around Superman has to be episode 21 from season 2 of the animated series. The premise to this episode is a simple, yet original one. Superman is going about his everyday life when a man from a higher dimension with godlike powers comes to him with the sole purpose of annoying him. The only way Superman can make him go back? Make him say his own name backwards.
I can't even say your name forward. How am I supposed to say it backward?
No, don't! You don't have to say it backward. You have to get me to say it.
Say what?
Kill Tip Season! Yeah, sure thing. Now for the last time. Your 3 months are up, and this time you're not gonna cheat me out of my fun.
Oh, it's you again, Mr. Phil Tipsy.
Not till Tip Season. It's just Pitland. Now, the first thing I wanna do, nuts.
If this episode goes to prove anything, it's that it's entirely possible to write a good Superman story. You just need to have a unique idea to bring to a character who thousands of writers have spent most of their collective careers trying to come up with ideas for. Sounds easy enough.
Look, I'm tired of this. If it's a fight you want...
Oh, it is, it is.
Fine. First, let me proofread this article, and I'll meet you on the roof in 20 minutes.
No stalling. I'll let it the rag for you.
The fact Superman is perfect has many problems. It leaves little room for character development, and also whenever a character is perfect, just like the guy in an interview who says, "I care too much," it is quite unbelievable. When we see Batman leaping from rooftop to rooftop, it is believable, not because he is the least outlandish hero, but because he has a rich, unique and interesting character who can fail and whom the odds are stacked against. This creates investment. And when we see Superman being an invincible god who glides over every obstacle and always gets the girl, it strikes us as unreal and can make it exceptionally hard for us to feel investment towards the character. Thanks for watching today's video. If you look down below, you'll see something has changed.
Basically, right, you know what? You know, this is something that's been said for years, and it's one of those things. There's some people who just don't get Superman. There's some people. I mean, is he perfect though? Is he? It depends what your idea of perfect is. Because to Superman, from his point of view, he's not perfect. He all his life he's had these powers. He was taught by his parents, especially by his father Jonathan, you know, to be responsible with these powers. And, you know, he becomes a hero. But what I'm saying to you is that basically that doesn't make him boring or uninteresting. I've never been bored by this character. Millions of people around the world have never been bored of this character. But you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to pause this. Then we're going to watch this other video about Batman v Superman sucking. Then we're really going to delve into this. Welcome back. Yeah, we're back with this Henry guy and this closer look channel, whatever it's called. Now he's going to tell us why Batman v Superman sucks. And I'm going to be here as a DCEU fan tearing him to pieces. So let's see what Henry has to say.
Look, in this week's video, we'll be analysing Batman vs Superman whilst asking the question, why did it fail as a movie? All materials used in this video are for a non-profit educational purpose and fall well within the guidelines of fair use. Now, before I start this video, I would just like to say I actually enjoyed this movie. but I completely understand why the vast majority of viewers do not share my opinion, as there are many flaws with this film. Also, 2 warnings I need to give you before we start. Firstly, spoilers for Batman vs Superman, and also I may geek out at some point because in my spare time, I'm a bit of a DC fanboy. Anyway, a fellow YouTuber who makes similar content to me called Nerdwriter made a video about this very topic a couple of months back. In this video, he made the conclusion that the movie failed because it kept focusing on individual moments rather than the overall story. He has a point, but I can safely say that he only scratched the surface. There is a lot more here that we need to address before we answer the question of why it failed. Also, Nerdwriter, if you're watching, I just gave you a shout out and sent at least 2, maybe even 3 of my viewers your way. So I'm just saying, maybe you could shout me out. Sorry, I'm just desperate for more exposure. Anyway.
Yeah, he's desperate for exposure. He's had about 30k views on his videos, but he needs more exposure. Right, so first of all, he wants to answer the question why Batman v Superman failed. But did it? Did Batman v Superman fail? Really, Henry? Yes, it didn't make the $2 billion that maybe Warner Brothers wanted, but is it a failure with people still talking about it, still going out to buy the Blu-ray? You know, this film's exposure is ridiculously kind of long-lasting. And if you think about it, more people talk about Batman v Superman than Captain America Civil War.
But it is easy to get caught up in little moments and criticise the film purely on them. For example, the infamous Martha scene. However, in my first draft of this video, I tried to analyse some of these specific moments, but it never really answered the essay's question, and I just ended up right back where I started. So, in this video, I'll instead aim my focus on the overall picture of the film. So, reason number 1 for why this film failed. None of the characters had good motivation. We know Batman's motivation. He wanted to kill Superman to protect the innocence of his city. But throughout the story, what was Superman's motivation to stop Batman? And also, what was Lex Luthor's motivation? Pause the video now and ask yourself those questions. Have you thought about it?
Right, yeah, let's pause the video. And right, Batman's motivation is that he's been through a lot. He's lost Robin. He's lost too much and he's still hurting. And he's broken. So then we see the whole point. You can see Batman's motivation is building from the moment we see that opening sequence when we see Bruce's point of view of the Battle of Metropolis. He sees, he's embracing that little girl. He blames Superman totally for everything that's happened in the Battle of Metropolis. And it builds and builds and builds throughout the film. And that it is his motivation. And he sees Superman as a threat to humanity. What's Superman's motivation through this whole film? Well, that's simple. He's been rejected and questioned by the government, by many, many people of the planet. His motivation here is to become the hero that his father foresee him becoming. And he's trying to do that. But every time he does it, he's put down or criticised, just like this investigation is doing by, the senator from Kentucky, played beautifully by Holly Hunter. His motivation is to be this hero, but he's questioning it all the time. Lex Luthor's motivation is that he believes that he should be a god, not Superman. He hates Superman because Superman basically makes him feel small, and he also reminds him of his father who abused him a great deal.
Okay, so what was Superman's motivation? If you have an answer, then you're clearly a better man than me because I've seen the film 3 times and I still have no bloody clue. You can tell Superman's motivation was extremely weak because the scriptwriter had to force in the idea that his mother's life was on the line, so he had to fight Batman instead. So, we've established that Superman's motivation was very weak, if even that. But
you see, he's over-focused on the Martha moment. But talking about the Martha moment, to me, it's a very compelling moment. But I mean, I don't care about persuading anyone to like that moment, but it is a compelling moment, right? Because they don't stop fighting. How many more times they do not stop fighting because their mothers have the same name? He realizes that Clark Kent is a person with feelings, with a mother who's in danger, and that's why the fight stops. And also, when he says Martha, Bruce is going insane. Why is he saying her name? What's going on? Am I wrong? Is my mother actually alive? Am I going nuts here? Bruce is going insane. He doesn't know what to think. It's a marvellous moment.
But now, let's look at Lex Luthor. What was his motivation? That's the ridiculous part. He genuinely has no motivation at all. He pits Superman and Batman against each other in a fight and puts millions of lives at risk for what I can only assume to be purely his own self-entertainment. This issue of motivation underlines one of the key flaws in this movie. It has... No. He's trying to kill two birds with one stone. Firstly, he don't want Superman to die. He wants the people to see Superman for what he believes Superman is, a fraud. He wants the people to see that Superman isn't this saviour, isn't a god, and is just as weak and as fraudulent as the rest of humanity. That's what he wants. He wants to strip Superman of his godlike nature. That is his mentality. And where Batman's concerned, he wants Superman. He basically wants them to kill each other, right? So then they're both out of his way. But before they kill each other, he wants the people to see Superman as an ordinary, flawed person. There's your motivation, mate. Go and watch it again. No soul. Civil War came out 6 months before Batman vs Superman, and it has a somewhat similar storyline. So this makes it a natural control to test why BVS wasn't good. And the number one reason is this. We actually cared about the characters in Civil War. As an audience, we fully understood why everyone was doing what they were doing, and more than that, we felt genuine, real connection and emotion for both Iron Man and Captain America. All of this culminating in the soul-destroying...
Firstly, Captain America Civil War came after Batman v Superman. He's got that wrong. And look, it's an okay movie. But I cared about the characters in Batman v Superman too. And plus, if you're going to take the piss out of the Martha moment, let's take the piss out of the love letter Captain America writes to Iron Man just after they fought. Hey, I'll be here if you need me. After all that. So, again, actually bringing up the MCU and comparing it to Batman v Superman and saying why Civil War is better than Batman v Superman really grinds my gears.
Final fight between them as two once close friends become worst enemies. The emotion and empathy we have as an audience is pouring through the screen in Civil War. But with Batman vs Superman, we felt none of that. There is no moment of sympathy or love or any emotion at all for that matter. When Superman was killed...
There is no emotion apart from that beautiful moment when Clark says to Lois, "This is my world, you are my world." He grabs the kryptonite and he knows he's going to die and he sacrifices his own life. That's pretty emotional, or not to you maybe. Maybe you need to grow a soul, Henry.
In the end, it was supposed to be the emotional climax of the film. In this moment, not only was I not sad in any way, I was actually bored. I even remember yawning in the cinema during his funeral scene.
He yawned at the cinema during his funeral scene. Well, Henry, you're clearly not really a DC Comics fan, are you? I'll tell you what you've done, Henry. You've studied the comics a little bit so you can back up a few ideas and make these videos about Superman and Batman v Superman. You're not a true DC fan. It is emotional, and that funeral is utterly emotional. And to think that you yawned, you shouldn't have even gone to see the film because you clearly are not interested in these type of characters. But you'll make a video about them to get lots and lots of views and clicks, won't you?
And not only does Superman's death carry no real weight at all, as we all know they'd never kill off Superman this early because he's too much of a cash cow, But Snyder has the audacity to make the sequence where everyone is mourning his death 10 minutes long. And throughout this sequence, Snyder is trying his absolute best to tell us to do one thing. Be sad. Be sad. Be sad.
Henry, you really are. Don't listen. I don't want to insult you, mate, but you are an absolute idiot. Of course we're sad. Superman has died. People would see this film because we love Superman, right? Of course we're sad that he sacrificed his life. It is sad. It is emotional. So in fact, Snyder does pull it off. And so what? If the funeral and all that is 10 minutes, so what? How dare you? You are talking absolute nonsense. You must have I don't know, did it take you 5 minutes to write this video? Luckily for me, I don't need to be scripted because I have an imagination and a personality of my very own.
And are you sad yet? Snyder, as a director, is brilliant at creating good visuals, but what he's not so good at is being a good storyteller. He doesn't know how to build rapport between a character and his audience, and by an extension of that, he doesn't know how to make the audience care. Snyder knew he didn't create enough emotion in the film, so he made the mourning sequence 10 minutes long to really force the sadness down the audience's throat. It's like my granddad used to say, you can polish that turd as much as you like, but at the end of the day, it's still a piece of shit. Now, let's move on to the second reason for why this film failed.
Didn't he say he likes this film? Well, he's clearly lying. You know, oh, let me make it clear. I actually like this film. Well, clearly you don't like this film, Henry. And what you pretty much said about Zack Snyder was absolutely ridiculous. He creates everything you need. He gets performances. I do care about these characters. Millions of people around the world cared about this film and the characters within it. Just because it's not made into your mainstream template and the way you think films should be made and written doesn't make it bad, and it doesn't mean the man doesn't know how to make an audience care about characters. And oh my God, the piece of turd thing. And what about that awful accent? If you went to RADA, I'd ask for my money back.
The creators did not respect the source material. Batman has always had one rule: never take a life. Even when you're looking the devil in the eye. Never compromise. Never back down. There is always another way. Batman never kills. And if the real Batman we all know were in the shoes of this movie's Batman, he would never condemn any man to death, even if...
Can I just say something? You know this moral outrage every time a superhero kills a character or lets someone die? It amazes me why does everyone get so upset? Oh, Batman killed a few people. I never thought twice about it. I don't know the source material that well. Maybe that helps me out not to care about this. But basically, he's in a situation where it's kill or be killed. It's not a comic book, it's live action. And for me, it's totally fine.
That man had committed the most horrific crimes. This right here is one of Batman's most admirable traits. It essentially is what makes Batman, Batman. But in this film, they prostituted out the character of Batman, ignored his history, ignored what made him the iconic hero he is, and changed his character fundamentally, purely so they could have a 3-minute glorified punch-up. But the change to Batman's character isn't what annoyed me the most. What annoyed me the most was the unforgivable and truly pointless changes they made to Lex Luthor. I warned you at the start I might geek out. Well, here it comes. In the comics and animated shows, Lex Luthor has always been the best villain in DC's history, with the exception of maybe the Joker. Luthor is cunning. He is a genuine genius and will ignore all ethical boundaries until his goals are met. When Luthor is in the room, he owns it. Every word that comes out of his mouth is meticulously planned, and he is a master manipulator. The reason why he is such a brilliant Superman villain is because even though he has no physical powers, he can always beat the Man of Steel purely on intellect alone.
Do you know how much power I'd have to give up to be president? That's right, conspiracy buff. I spent $75 million on a fake presidential campaign, all just to tick Superman off.
But instead of this dark, brooding, intimidating Luthor, we got this.
Next category, circles. Round and round and round they go to find Superman. Wrong category, boy. No. Let's try one.
The reason I believe this change to be a bad move is a very simple one. If the animated version of Luthor were in this movie, it would have been better in every way. A lot of people complained about Luthor's lack of motivation, but here's another nail in the coffin for this film. If Snyder added a 50-second scene into the movie, it would have dramatically improved Luthor as a character. If I made Batman vs Superman, here's how I would have done it. Luthor is sitting in his chair, looking through his skyscraper's window straight down at the people of Metropolis. The senator bursts into the room with anger in her eyes. I'm blocking your import license. I won't be an accomplice to your manipulative schemes, the senator said, with a certain fear in her voice. The camera is focusing on just Luthor's mouth. At no point yet in the movie have we had a full view of Luthor's face. Luthor lets out a sly smile, still looking down through the window. You have a wonderful daughter, Senator Fitch. Rachel is one of the highest achievers in her class. For her sake, you will let this bill pass, Lex said, with an uncomfortably friendly tone. The senator's eyes widened with fear. Luthor still not so much as turning his chair to acknowledge her presence. You're a monster, the senator said, with her body trembling as she did. No, I'm not the monster. Superman is. The world needs to be protected. I am the only one who can provide such protection, said Luthor with a great degree of confidence. Bullshit! This isn't about doing what's right. You don't care what happens to those people down there. This isn't about right and wrong. It's about you. You have such an ego that you can't stand the...
Right, that's enough for the time being. Right, he's going through all this, right, telling us how he would have done it a lot better. Tell me something. What's better, what he's saying or what he's blabbing about, or that compelling Senate explosion that shows you exactly what Lex Luthor actually is? He sacrifices a disabled man just to stitch Superman up. It's a compelling moment, and he kills the senator as well. So you take away all that dialogue, and in one moment you truly see who and what Lex Luthor is. Meanwhile, this guy Henry is still blabbering on.
The idea that someone out there has more power than you. Luthor slowly turns his chair to look the senator straight in the eye. The camera is on his lower face as he lets out a sinister, sly smile. Now, I hope we're all in agreement, but that version of Luthor right there would have been completely superior to Eisenberg's interpretation in every way. Now, Snyder didn't 100% balls his character up. There was one scene on the helipad where he called Superman his real name, confessing he knows his secret identity. He also has pictures of his kidnapped, gagged mother that he throws at his feet. All of this in a manipulatory move to bend Superman to his will. This was the only moment in the entire film that actually evoked an emotional response from me, as not only did it fall into line with what the real Luthor would have done, but it was also a very unsuspected and enjoyable twist. Also, I need to ask you all a favour. Don't blame Jesse Eisenberg for messing this character up. Snyder and the others behind the scenes were the ones who made the decision to take this character in this direction. Jesse even says this in an interview.
Which I was so surprised by, because I guess I pictured like Luthor as older, and I guess just by virtue of him being bald, I assumed I never thought of myself as that kind of character. But then when I read the script, when I got on set, I realized that I could do a good job with it.
Now, this leads me on to my final point. There is an element to storytelling that every good writer and director understands. However, it appears Zack Snyder has failed to grasp this idea as Batman vs Superman completely ignores the invisible rule of storytelling. The rule is this: show, don't tell. What this saying means is if you want to tell the audience a fact, show it to them organically and let the audience come to their own conclusions. Never tell the audience, show them. This is the reason most filmmakers boycott narration, because narration is telling the audience the story instead of letting the audience experience it for themselves. Okay, let me give you an example in another film. So I'm going to talk about Harry Potter for the next 30 seconds, so skip ahead if you don't want any spoilers. Harry Potter was a brilliant franchise with expert direction and an interesting story. Experiencing that story organically was very entertaining. But if instead of watching the films, I came up to you and said, Harry's parents died, then it turned out he was a Horcrux, then he died, then he decided he didn't want to, then he killed the villain and lived happily ever after. It just doesn't carry any emotional weight. Telling an audience a story happened will never, under any circumstances, beat the audience experiencing that story for themselves. An example of the many times Snyder told us but didn't tell us was with Batman. He told us Batman is old and has lost his moral code. We understand, just as much as someone who read the story understands, but understanding is not what the art of film is about. Film is about making the audience feel emotion, whatever form it.
The arrogance of this guy. How many films have you made? How many blockbuster successes? How many studios have you directed for? None. But you're telling Zack Snyder that how he makes films is wrong, but how you would do it is right. This is so arrogant. And when? Right, he basically told us about Harry Potter. If we found out before we saw it about Harry Potter's whole life, it wouldn't be as good. Well, when do I see this? Oh, because you're telling me Batman's older. So what? He's doing a version of an older Batman. There's been a version of the older Batman in the comics and in an animated movie. So, Henry, you're talking nonsense.
Maybe. If you fail to make your film an emotional journey, you have failed as a director. The reason for why Batman is a broken character is not explained at all. We are just told that is the case. If I were directing the movie, I would have made that scene where Batman visits his parents' graves just a little bit longer. Batman walks up to the two coffins. The camera shows two nameplates on them, Thomas and Martha Wayne. He pulls out a bouquet of roses and places all but one in a pot between the two. Slowly, he turns to his right to see another coffin. The name is blocked by Bruce's body, and we can't see what it says. He places the last rose onto a pot nearby and then lays his hand lovingly on the top of the stone. Bruce walks away from the tomb and back into the light. The camera slowly pans from the entrance towards the lonely coffin to see two words engraved on the side. Dick Grayson. This would have been such a powerful, beautiful, and above all, emotional moment, because it would actually answer the question of why Batman is broken and would hint towards a large story.
Even though in his lair we already see Batman's suit with Joker's chilling message on it, I think that's a better way of doing it, and it explains everything, right? But you want him to go to a gravestone where it says Dick Grayson. Sorry, Henry, you are not the storytelling maestro you believe yourself to be.
This right here is how you do universe building. Not by having one of your characters watch a couple of YouTube videos.
Oh, you've done lots of universe building, have you, Henry? I didn't realise you were a Hollywood mogul and you've made loads of films. I do apologise. And by the way, he's going to start slagging off the moment when we see, like, hints of these Justice League characters on these videos. I thought it was a great way of doing it. It's a difficult situation to have to put them in the film anyway. I suppose if you really want them to be seen, you'd have to do things, you'd have to involve them. They involved Wonder Woman a lot in this film, a lot more but they just wanted to do cameos of those characters. And in that aspect, it was good. I got what they were trying to do. I saw Aquaman, I saw The Flash, I saw Cyborg. I thought it was great, and it worked for me.
Maybe Bruce was responsible for Dick's death, as he let a villain live, and then that villain went on to murder Robin. This broke Batman, as it didn't just fill his heart with guilt, but it also proved that his philosophy of never killing doesn't work on some criminals, as some criminals are better off dead. Or maybe not. That question would never be answered, and the audience would never know for sure. But great film is not about knowing. It's about feeling, about teaching the audience the complexities of the human condition. And when a film such as Batman vs Superman does not deliver genuine emotion, it fails as a film, as it has no soul. And I don't want to be a complete pessimist, so I will give this film one accolade. It's not the worst Batman movie out there. But then again, that's not saying much. Thanks for watching this week's video. I'm starting to...
Henry, I don't want to swear at you, but you are a W, aren't you? As I say, he starts off this video saying he actually likes this film. You don't like this film, and you've just said the same contrived things that everybody says. This is, you know, Batman fans have said this is one of the best versions of Batman on the screen. You know, Batman wasn't really the issue for so many people who didn't like this film, and you slaughtered Batman. Everything he said is contrived, and every person who loves this film kind of can see the emotion. This film hasn't got a soul. Hasn't got a soul, Henry. It's probably got the biggest soul out of any CBM, and it is teaching people something. At the end, when you know, Bruce does his speech, and the Men Is Still Good speech, right? A beautiful, emotional speech. There you go, Henry. More emotion. So there is soul in this film, and there is emotion. Because at the end, you see a man who regrets. He hated Superman all throughout this movie. Then he saw him for what he was. A person with a mother and a girlfriend and with feelings. And he says it. I failed him in life. I won't fail him in death. That always makes me want to cry. So, for people who didn't feel the emotion, who were bored in this film, I'm not going to try and bring you over to my side. There's enough of us who love Batman v Superman and Man of Steel and Superman. But basically, what I would say to you is, you're wrong. Batman v Superman is a wonderful, epic film. It's just not done in the way you expected it to be. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you understand why I did this video. I can't have videos out there slaughtering Zach's work, slaughtering the DCEU without me having the right to reply. We will talk again at another time. Thank you for watching.